It's on vibrate.
We're about to, in a few minutes, go live here with Doug Kouns of Veracity. And we're going to talk about some of his cases from the FBI, and he's got a wealth of information that you can share too. We're about to go live here, so we'll get all of this going for people. Okay. Check out a couple of sites. Look, it's even got subtitles there so people can follow along. All right. Well, hello everyone. My name is Adam Aasen. I'm here live with Doug Kouns, the president. Are you the president or the founder?
CEO, whatever, owner.
Co-owner. He's got partners.
I've been called
Veracity IIR, a private investigation firm. That how old is it now? It's been around a couple years now, right?
Yeah, we're coming up on our second year. April, September of 2018 we started.
All right, and so before that, you have 22 years experience working in law enforcement, specifically the FBI.
Right.
And you kind of took an interesting path. You were a teacher, chemistry teacher, before you went into the FBI, which do most people go from that path to, I mean, we've heard about chemistry teachers going into meth dealing from Breaking Bad, but I didn't know they go to the FBI too. So
I get asked that question about Breaking Bad all the time. It's one of my favorite shows too. But no, I don't think it's common. It's not really common for anybody really to get into the FBI path. It's very difficult. But no, I just a series of circumstances ran into an old teacher of mine. So maybe it's not that uncommon, that had become an FBI agent. And from talking to him, he got me interested, took the exam, and about a year later, I was off to the academy. So, yeah, little change in career path there.
So your first assignment, we're going to go talk a little bit about your background before we get into a case, because we're probably going to maybe do a couple of these with you and some of your other partners at the firm. But we want to get to know you guys too.
Okay.
So I feel like they're with you in the cases. Now, first off, you're from the Indianapolis area.
Hartford City, Indiana, since we're all mostly here in Indiana. They probably know that. It's near Muncie, little town, probably, I don't know,
you're
5,000 people.
State alum.
Right.
But when you went to the FBI, you don't get to pick necessarily where you go.
No.
So you were assigned very far away in South Dakota.
Sioux Falls, South Dakota, yes.
And the interesting thing was, people wonder, what kind of cases are there in South Dakota? Well, Native American reservation is, if you have a murder or something on there, many people might have seen the movie Wind River, which is a perfect example of this. The FBI would actually go and investigate that. So you were handling kind of everyday things that a lot of FBI officers wouldn't necessarily handle because you had that Indian reservation there, correct?
Right. Working in, we called it Indian country back there then, and working on the reservation, it's not exactly what you would picture as an FBI agent working. It was serious assaults, murders, drugs. Of course, FBI works drugs anyway, but it was more like being a detective, I guess I would say, more general crime rather than, what people think of as your bank robberies and your kidnappings and your extortions and your big white collar cases, that kind of thing, public corruption. There was a little bit of that, but it was definitely different. You worked a wider variety of things.
So was there any conflict kind of between the Native Americans on the reservation and you as the FBI kind of coming in there to investigate?
It really wasn't as bad as TV makes it out to be. There's another movie called Thunderheart back from the 80s with Val Kilmer, and that's decent as far as some of that goes. But I worked with the tribal investigators, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the local government. They were all great to work with. The people are great people. You know, there's criminals amongst every group, and those were the ones that I dealt with. And sometimes you were dealt with, you know, apprehension at first, but once you got to talking to people, that came down pretty quickly.
So because you were working with a wide variety of cases right off the bat, and how old were you at the time?
27.
27.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to deal with homicides quite a bit early in your caseload, which doesn't always happen for an FBI agent.
Right.
I mean, how long was it on that you kind of encountered your first dead body?
Oh, these are the things that you lock away in the brain, because they're not pleasant experiences. I think the first death investigation, it turned out to not be a homicide. It was suspected arson, and I got to the scene, and there was a burnt corpse on the floor. I can see it right now. It's not really pleasant work. Any unattended death, you treat it as if it were a homicide until you had otherwise. So suicides, accidental deaths, overdoses, you name it, we had to respond to those. And a lot of them were ruled out as either accidental or not homicides, but a few of them were. You know, there was some violence.
So from there, things changed pretty early in your career when September 11th, 2001 happened.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI kind of shifted from an agency that dealt with some kind of intelligence gathering, national security, to that almost being a main focus of what you did from then on.
Right. After September 11th, it changed for all of us drastically. And even in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, there's a component of Middle Eastern people. And especially back then, if you were Middle Eastern, somebody found you suspicious for some reason, and they would call us, and we were obligated to check all those out. Now, 99.9 or more even percent of those turned out to just be people's ignorance, because even back then it wasn't as prevalent. And you know, just praying towards Mecca was enough to make a phone call back then. People weren't used to it, and so we did a lot of interviewing of people quickly. Sioux Falls is small. Pretty quickly got to know almost everybody.
So when you're dealing with something like national security, and a lot of people remember back, we kind of came together as a country after 9/11, but there also was a lot of tensions, a lot of fear. When you're dealing with a lot of tips at the time, what was it like? Was it just you were just flooded with information of, oh my God, I saw something that looked suspicious? Yes,
it was. It made it difficult to work the things that were valid. For example, we would get, I mean, these are real calls that I got. A Middle Eastern woman that was at Target buying knives, and I mean, it's just kitchen knives. That's common stuff. That's not really suspicious, because the woman looked Middle Eastern and was buying knives. They're making this huge irrational jump that they're going to do something bad with the knives. But once you get that call, okay, so you're 0.9% sure that this is nothing, but say you don't follow up on that, and then that 1.01%, they go stab somebody, you're going to get questioned for why didn't you check that out? Well, it didn't seem like a reasonable threat, but it was an articulated threat. So we're obligated to go check those out. So while we're dealing with all these not crazy calls, but just irrational calls, there's real stuff that we need to be checking out that detracts us from. You know, at the same time, we had some anthrax scares and white powder everywhere. And sometimes it was from powdered donuts in the break room, and somebody saw white powder and called us. I'm not kidding. That call happened.
Jelly glaze.
Or somebody drops a wintergreen lifesaver on the school floor and it gets stepped on 2 or 3 times. there's white powder on the floor. They evacuated the whole school, and we had to respond to that. So that was kind of the hysteria we were dealing with shortly after 9/11.
And we don't really hear when things go wrong when it comes to terrorism and national security. When you stop a threat, we don't always hear about that, correct?
Correct. Correct.
I mean, how close are some of these things to actually happening that you investigate?
I can't talk a lot about details on that, but there's a lot of good work that happens that nobody ever hears about.
And you look into it, and I mean, if you weren't there, in some of these cases, something might have happened.
It's possible, yeah. Yeah, we go out and we try to develop a network of information, be it through liaison with store owners, religious facilities, just the community, and you try to develop a network of communication to where you find out something bad might happen before it does, and then you can put a stop to it.
So eventually you get seniority in South Dakota after being there for so many years, and you get moved to Indiana, which is closer to your family. You still have family here, correct?
Right.
So, and you were in Bloomington and then the Indianapolis office for many, many years. So you know a lot of cases that people watching, I assume a lot of people watching this are from Indiana, might know some of these cases too.
Possibly, yeah. Especially when I was in Indiana, I worked mostly national security stuff, and like you said, you don't hear a lot about that kind of stuff. So it might have been me just helping with the case, or being at the search warrant to just search and haul out boxes once we're done, or who knows what it is. But some of them you've heard about. I was on another podcast last year. We talked about the Coleman murder. Yeah.
So with this kind of weekly video thing, we may do this weekly. We're kind of trying this for the first time. We want to kind of delve into some of these cases and stories. We know a lot of true crime podcasts, and Discovery ID is popular. By the way, do you watch that stuff, or is it hard for you to watch things like Discovery ID from with your
I occasionally watch them if I remember the case from way back when or whatever, or every once in a while I'll know the person that's being featured. I was actually filmed one time for America's Most Wanted. I had a fugitive that was going to be featured, and then it got bumped a week for my airing, and in the week between when it got bumped, the guy got caught and it never made it. So
it's okay.
Yeah.
Well, now Unsolved Mysteries is back. Everything comes back. It's on Netflix now.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
I know. I was a crime reporter in Jacksonville, Florida, and Florida's got a lot of cases. So sometimes we're flipping through Discovery ID, and I'm like, I know that attorney, I know that newspaper reporter, because it all seems to kind of be in that area, Florida.
Right.
The Florida man stuff is true. So, well, we wanted to kind of maybe get into a case this week, so you kind of look back into your mind and try to find something that might be interesting. So what are we going to kind of be talking about this week?
All right. So I figured if we're going to make this like a series kind of thing, that I should start close to the beginning when I was a young agent, and some of the more notable cases or interesting or funny, whatever. So this one's interesting and funny, I think. So there was a computer company that had a former employee. They'd fired him and he was disgruntled, and he contacted them and threatened to expose a flaw in their motherboards that would cause the recall of all of this brand of computers for a period of years. And in return for not sharing that information with the FCC, he wanted a $5 million payment. So it's an extortion case. I was a pretty new guy. I think I had maybe about a year in, and the case was assigned to me. It's been a while, so all the details are a little unclear, but we decided to do an undercover operation. And being a new guy, I haven't been through undercover school, which you have to get certified normally, but you can get an SAC's exemption. Now, an SAC is the head of your field office. So we get approval by our SAC to do this undercover operation. And I'm to pose as an executive of this company, or actually like an attorney representing this company, like a fixer type deal to make this problem go away. So I reach out to the guy, and our technology, we thought it was good back then, but we didn't have the tools and like we did now. We couldn't get a real good positive identification on the guy. So we had a name, we had a phone number, and I was first to negotiate down the 5 million to something, closer to around $1 million. There's like sentencing guidelines, and if it's between this much money and this much money, you get this many years and whatnot. So anyway, we thought $1 million when he's asking for 5 would be a good number to shoot for. So I get him on the phone, and the first thing I do is a rookie mistake, and I just say, hey, 5 million, we want to work this out. We don't want any bad publicity, but 5 million is unrealistic. I need a better number to work with. And he says, how about 15? And I'm like, 15, and he says, 1,000. So we went from 5 million down to well below, what we were shooting for. And
not a good negotiator, is it?
You can't haggle back up. It's like, oh, that's a little too low. How about if I give you $1 million?
Wait, why it's too low? Explain to the people watching why is 15,000 too low? Because of the
sentencing guidelines. This guy is demanding. He started out demanding 5 million, so we already think $1 million's a lot less than he's asking for. So that's reasonable. But he drops all the way down to $15,000, and you're like, okay, well now we're there. There's really not much we can do about it. So. We continue to talk and come up with a plan. I'm supposed to meet him at a hotel the next morning to make the payment, and he'll just disappear. We'll never hear from him again. So with that,
do you have a briefcase full of cash that we always see in the movie?
That's the next thing. So we don't have time to get approval and whatnot for show money, is what we would, when you're going to do any kind of a buy bust or payment of something, and you're not going to let it take it. It's called a show money. So we had this old dot matrix printer, and I printed out fake cashier's checks for $999 each. And so we're going to tell them, don't deposit these all at once, like to avoid structuring. That's another like bank fraud kind of thing. And they're the worst looking homemade things. I don't know.
But he's a fraud artist, and you're printing off checks, and you're thinking, okay, is he going to be able to catch this?
Yeah, well, I don't really have any other choice. This is what we're going to do. So
you think the guy is, because he already went from 5 million to 15,000. Are you wondering how bright this person is?
Yeah, it's already entered in my mind that I'm not dealing with the sharpest tool in the shed. And so we print these out, and I'm like, all right, I'll try. He's expecting cash, so I figure there's going to be protest when I show up with checks. They're cashier's checks, they're supposed to be looking like cashier's checks, but they've got the fuzzy edges from peeling them off the old printer and whatnot. And the other thing is, because we can't identify him, we don't know what kind of criminal background he has, if he has violence or whatnot. So my boss is insisting that I wear soft body armor underneath my suit coat. And I was a pretty trim guy back then, and to me, it's obvious I've got on body armor. I didn't want to wear it, but it's, he's the boss, says I got to wear it, so I wear it, and I go in. And the plan is, I'll chat with him a while, see how it goes, and then make the payment. And once I make the payment, it's being monitored from the adjoining room with a hidden camera. Once they see the payments made, the arrest team's going to come around, knock on the door, and I'll say it's got a maintenance problem, the faucet's leaking, and it's probably them. So the room it's one of those with two queen beds, and I want him to sit in a certain place so the camera captures him. And so I mess up the one bed, thinking, okay, if this looks like the one that I slept in, he's not going to sit on that, right? Kind of a logical assumption. So he comes in, and guess where he sits? The wrong bed. So the camera's not on him whatsoever. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do about this? So we're chatting, and we finally get the payment. I tell tell him, I couldn't get the cash in time. I brought these checks, but they were completely clean. Wouldn't be any problem for him. He's fine with it, to my surprise, doesn't protest whatsoever. And so the camera's pointing the wrong way, and I'll use this as a prop. Let's just say this is my hidden camera in something in the hotel room. And I take out my checks and I start counting them out. And I'm 1, 2, 3, 4. turn the camera around, and then finish 5, 6. So he looks right at it, just kind of like puzzled, kind of like, and then just continues on. So I make the payments, and then there's the maintenance, and I said, oh yeah, the faucet's leaking. I gotta let these guys in. Open the door, rest team runs in, and I forgot to say this. It turns out when he showed up, it's this little guy. He's about 5'4", skinny, bald on top, long blonde hair, about shoulder length, and big Coke bottle glasses that made his eyes look just as big around as the glasses were. And so very non-threatening. And we have, like 6 agents in the next room coming in. And of course, we couldn't have known that ahead of time, but it just kind of was amusing to us later.
So when you are undercover or posing as someone, did you dress differently, act differently? What did you do? Did you get your actor kind of experience?
Not a little bit. I mean, for the role I was playing, it was that of an attorney hired by the company to make this problem go away. So I just was wearing a suit, which I needed to help conceal the body armor that I was wearing underneath it. And I've got a background, and I can talk the talk if need be, and then you can do research. But this really wasn't. It didn't involve a lot of undercover skills, and I was a new guy, and I really didn't have any skills anyway. So it was a good first experience for undercover work.
So when you're what was going through your mind when you're meeting with somebody and you don't know what the person looks like, you don't know their background? Like you said, it was kind of a non-threatening person, but you don't know that when you enter the room. Is there any fear that kind of goes through your mind?
Yeah, I would say so. You don't know that till they show up, and even a non-threatening looking guy doesn't mean that he is non-threatening. He could have a gun, he could have a knife. People in those kind of situations don't always react well, so you never know what's going to happen. And so there's always a little bit of that feeling that you get, and I think it actually helps me. You get a little adrenaline rush, and you got to control it and use it to your advantage. And ultimately, I always just try to put myself in role. And okay, I'm really this guy, and I'm really just talking to him about this. And I'm going to just act like I would with anybody. We're going to talk about where's a good place. I'm from out of town. Where's a good place to eat? And he told me about this restaurant, and it's a little pricey, but it's good food. Everybody likes it. And so we're just having a normal conversation. And
so when you're doing something like that, where you're trying to convince somebody to finish a deal, whether it's a drug bust or in this case, kind of an extortion case, legally, how do you work it so they're committing the act, but you're not entrapping them?
Well, he approached us. So entrapment means you're enticing someone to do something that they would not do otherwise. So you don't seem like a person that would be one to extort people. And so if I set you up to do something that you wouldn't normally do, that would be entrapment. Well, this guy, he set the ball rolling. He wanted this extortion payment in return for not saying anything. So your job as the undercover is to get him to make comments, statements recorded by audio, and in this case we had video too. That okay, so you just say, all right, so before I give you this money, I just want to make sure it's clear that you're not going to go to the FCC or the media and tell them about this problem with these computers, right? Yes. So you just got him to confirm that he's extorting you. And
if you're hypothetical, say you're in the process and the guy was like, oh, I'm really nervous, I think maybe we should back out of this. Legally, you couldn't talk him back into staying into it, could you?
There's a fine line. You would probably just have the normal conversation that you would have in that situation. If you start to look desperate, it'll get suspicious. So I would probably not push that person. I would say, well, this is entirely up to you. I'm here. We can do this now. This is what you wanted. You can get it over with if you want. If not, that's cool too.
So the same thing, and that was an interesting case, but I want to get into stuff too, where we talk about some of your skills that you have with the FBI, which work with your private investigation firm today. So if people are interested in hiring you, these are some of the same skills that you still employ. One of them is interrogation and interviewing.
Right.
So we always see in movies the good cop, the bad cop, people threatening or trying to shake someone down for information. I assume that's not how it's like in real life.
No, not usually, no.
Are you the good cop or the bad cop usually, Doug?
I'm always a good cop. So.
You're always the good cop? Okay. So how do you kind of build that relationship and kind of get information out of somebody, but doing it in a way that will hold up in court?
That's where experience really comes in, and there's an art to it, and there's a lot of training too. We actually teach a course on interview and interrogation. It's our most popular course that other law enforcement officers come to. But without going into it, there's a lot more than what people say. It's how they say it. It's the nonverbals. It's the little idiosyncrasies that you pick up on that tell you someone's not being honest. So if, I'm just talking about what the best restaurant is, and, do you go there a lot? What's Sioux Falls like? Is there anything else to do here? And they're telling you, well, you go to Minerva's restaurant on Main Street, and they've got this great steak. It's bought, and then it's a little pricey, but so they're talking, and then you bring up something. Okay, well, where were you Friday night? He's like, well, I was at home. You saw a clear, even if that was subtle, you saw a clear difference. You go to the face, that's like you're hiding the lie that you're telling, or you immediately cross your arms. I'm now defensive. Even like a little involuntary lip twitch or tapping your foot, changing position. There's little tricks that we pick up on that tell us whether or not you're being truthful. And we're not almost like, oh, I think you're lying. You don't just stop and confront them. You gotta just finesse your way around and let them come back to you. Usually that NYPD blue, Sipowicz pounding on the table, tell me the truth now. All that does is scare people. And if you get an answer, it sometimes is what they think you want to hear rather than the truth. So that's why we chose our name, Veracity, is because we seek the truth.
There you go. I mean, if you could just teach that to somebody who's on a first date, kind of how to get that body language and interview and interrogation skills, they would get at that truth and find out who that person is right away. I don't know if it'd be a second, but
well, there's books and stuff you can read on that kind of thing, body language and just detection of deception. That's a whole other class, actually.
Now, just so people can understand for your business, how would those skills help somebody if they were trying to hire your firm for something?
So we do all kinds of cases. We do fraud investigations. Companies hire us for like internal theft or external theft. Accident investigations, when a witness, it's not necessarily deception, but sometimes these accidents happen years ago and they don't necessarily remember who was at fault or what they saw. And so there's a cognitive interview process that you can go through where you take them through all their senses and, okay, what was the weather like? Oh, it was cold. I remember I had on my coat. And then that brings the whole scene back to them, and they will bring, did you smell anything? It smelled like an electrical fire, and you can just see them starting to relive it in their head. And they told you, this was a long time ago. I don't think I remember anything. You can bring all that back. It's in your head, It just takes a skilled interviewer to bring it out sometimes. So interviews, when you're doing a subject interview, detection of deception, getting them to tell you the truth, getting witnesses to remember what they did see. There's a variety of things that we apply these skills to in the private world.
So, and there is a lot of examples where a company may not want to get police involved, either because it doesn't rise to the level of a criminal case, or even if it might, they prefer to keep things quieter and not to have the police involved until necessary. And that's when someone might hire your company to say intellectual property theft or something like that, or something.
Right, or maybe it's really more of a civil dispute between former business partners, and they disagree over, I took this money out of the bank account, and well, I say you stole it. Well, no, it was mine. So we can help people get to the bottom of the problem. Sometimes we can help them settle these things. There might have gone. I'm getting something back in there. There it goes. Sometimes we can help them resolve these issues without going to court. And when we first started, we took a big case, millions of dollars, civil suit that had been going on for like 10 years, and we sorted through. I'm a certified fraud examiner, and I have another employee that is also CFE and also a CPA. We've got a couple of CPAs here too. So we dug through just boxes and boxes of documents, and we're pretty quickly able to get to the bottom. Here's exactly what happened, and they had it settled within a couple of months of us looking at it. So those are the things we can do.
I imagine it's easier now with the digital trails and footprints, where someone could lie to you, but their digital footprint may say something different and say, well, you sent this email, well, you did this, you did that, and you thought it was deleted, you thought it was gone, but your company can still do those things.
Yeah, we try to use technology advances to our advantage. So we use all the tools that are available, and with our experience, me and Kathy, Paul, all of us, we've got like 5 or 6 former agents. We've got U.S. Postal Inspector. We've got an international investigator. We've got state and local guys, and we're all at the top of their fields. And there's somebody here that knows how to do that, and we get to the bottom of things. Got a very high
I can imagine when it deals with company fraud, hiring you to either investigate something that's already happened, or even better, making sure you have systems in place to prevent fraud before they happen. You can save your company a lot of money. I think I was reading something about an insane amount of money that is lost every year through fraud for all these companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I speak about this. I'm asked to speak quite a bit, and prevention is so much easier. And typically people call us after they've been defrauded or lost money somehow, or been stolen from otherwise. And a good fraud protection, anti-theft protection program stops a lot of that. So putting cameras in strategic places and making your employees aware that you're on top of this stuff is a huge deterrent to them doing it in the first place. Knowing what the red flags are for somebody that might steal. As a certified fraud examiner, you learn about the fraud triangle, which is rationalization, motivation, and opportunity. So when somebody puts those 3 things together, they are at high risk for theft or fraud. If you see people
the added bonus to hiring Veracity is not only do you get a protection against fraud or a thorough team with years and decades of experience of law enforcement, but Doug will also tell you some stories about the FBI when he meets with you. He doesn't charge for those stories, so that's an added bonus. Well, thank you so much. Now, you've got a lot of cases that we could probably talk on a regular basis, and everyone on your team has got some great stories to tell, and hopefully people enjoy them. And if you have any questions, I know we'll kind of archive this on your page. Post comments, we'll respond. And if you have something that maybe a good story Doug told you in the past, and you're saying, "Hey, tell this one next time," post that comment. We'll get that out there. So, well, thank you so much. I wish I could ask what you're working on now, but I really don't think you can tell us, can you?
This afternoon, I've got a threat assessment in the store. So that's one thing we do is we'll come to your business or even your residents, and we've got a checklist of things we go through things to keep you safe.
Is that the hardest part? Is everyone wants you to tell them things, and you have to say, I can't tell you that. I can't tell you that. I
can usually alter the story enough to where I can talk about it and still make it a good story. You know, I leave names out, times and dates, and just tell it in such a way that it can be told.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Doug. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I hope everyone's having a good lunch hour or starting to make their lunch plans for the day. And send us your comments. Check out your website. What's your website address again? It's
just veracity.iir.com.
All right. And if people want to call, what's your phone number?
317-564-8383.
All right. Well, everyone have a good day. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Take care.